The elevator at Trident Core Systems felt even smaller than usual as I stood beside Larry, my ex-husband. We had been divorced for 3 years, but seeing him still made my stomach twist. We were headed up to the executive floor, watching the floor numbers slowly light up one by one. Larry stood there, wearing that same smug smile he always had. It used to charm me back when we were married. Now it just made me feel sick. "You're looking tired, Jennifer," he said in that same fake sweet voice he always used when he wanted to sound caring. I was wearing a simple black blazer and holding my laptop bag. I work as a consultant now, helping companies grow and fix problems. "Consulting must be tough these days," he added with a smirk. "My name is Jennifer Syme," I thought to myself, holding in a deep breath. "I'm 40 years old, and today I'm going to teach my ex-husband the most expensive lesson of his life." But of course, he didn't know that yet. "Actually, business is great," I replied calmly. I kept my voice flat, showing no emotion. "But I guess you wouldn't know much about that anymore. You've been too busy planning a wedding with my ex-best friend." His smile grew even bigger. "Ah yes, Barbara mentioned she saw you at the country club last week," he said, as if it were no big deal. "She felt awful about everything, but you know how it goes. The heart wants what it wants." What the heart wanted, apparently, was to cheat on me with my best friend while we were still married. Then divorce me. He claimed we had irreconcilable differences. After that, he worked behind the scenes to push me out of the company we had built together. The elevator chimed as we reached the 40th floor. "Well, this is my stop," Larry said, adjusting his fancy Italian silk tie. "Board meeting, you know how it is." "Oh wait, you don't anymore, do you?" "Not since you gave up your shares during the divorce." "Gave up my shares?" That's how he tells the story. As if I had a choice. The truth is, he planned it all. He controlled the timing of the divorce, planted fake evidence that made it look like I had mishandled company money, and got the board to lose faith in me. By the time I realized what was going on, I had lost both my marriage and my role as chief strategy officer. "Good luck with your meeting," I said with a soft smile as he stepped off the elevator. "I'm sure it'll be eye-opening." He gave me a puzzled look, but the doors closed before he could say anything else. He had no idea what was coming next. I caught a quick look at Barbara standing near the boardroom doors. She was wearing a dress so expensive it probably cost more than most people make in a whole month. At least she had the decency to look a little uncomfortable when her eyes met mine. She quickly looked away, pretending to focus on something else. I didn't let it bother me. I waited until the elevator started moving again before I quietly pulled out my phone. I typed a message to Scott, my lawyer. "Me. Is everything ready?" His reply came back instantly. "Scott. All set. The representatives from Langston Mercer are in place. The board doesn't suspect a thing." Perfect. 3 years of quiet, careful planning were finally about to pay off. When Larry kicked me out of Trident Core Systems, he thought I would just fade away, that I was some sad, heartbroken woman who would cry and move on. But he had no idea what he'd actually created. He turned me into something far more powerful, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Right after the divorce, I started a small consulting firm. It looked like just another business on the outside. But really, it was a cover for my real mission, to take back what I helped build and prove I was stronger than ever. While working with small clients, I started reaching out and building a relationship with Langston Mercer, one of the biggest private equity firms in the country. They had been watching Trident Core Systems from a distance for years, just waiting for the right time to step in. I gave them that moment and much more. I shared everything I knew, how the company worked, where it was weak, what it was worth, and why it was still special. All the secrets Larry thought he had locked away, I had them too. The deal we planned was simple but powerful. Langston Mercer would buy Trident Core Systems through a leveraged buyout. And once the papers were signed, I would be named the new CEO. The price? $3.5 billion. The look on Larry's face when he finds out his ex-wife now owns the company he stole from her? Absolutely priceless. Just then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Barbara. "Barbara, can we talk before the board meeting? Please." I thought about ignoring her. but I was too curious. Me. Starbucks across the street. 20 minutes. The coffee shop was surprisingly quiet for a Saturday morning. Barbara was already there when I walked in. She was nervously playing with her huge engagement ring, the one I was sure Larry had paid for using company money. She stood up as I approached. "Jennifer," she said softly. "Thank you for coming. I know you probably hate me." I looked at her and said calmly, "Hate takes energy, and I don't waste mine on things that aren't worth it." "I'm not willing to waste my energy on you," I said, cutting her off as I sat down. Barbara looked surprised by how direct I was. She wasn't used to this version of me. The Barbara I used to know, the one I had trusted for 16 years, the one who was my maid of honor and my so-called best friend, had always been good at using sweet words to get out of any situation. She was charming, careful, and always knew what to say to make people forgive her. I wanted to explain," she began. "About Larry. About everything." I held up a hand and stopped her. "Let me guess. It just happened, right? You didn't mean to hurt me. You tried to fight your feelings but couldn't help falling in love. Am I missing anything?" Her cheeks turned red. "It wasn't like that," she said quickly. "Larry, he can be very persuasive when he wants something." "Oh, I remember," I said, my voice calm but cold. "He persuaded me to marry him. Then he convinced me to put all my inheritance into his company. I trusted him with everything. And what did he do? He talked the board into believing I couldn't do my job. He told our friends I was unstable. And then he convinced you that betraying me was okay." Barbara shifted in her seat, uncomfortable. "The board meeting today," she said suddenly, trying to change the topic. "Larry is going to announce some big changes. He wants to take the company in a new direction." I let out a short laugh, sharp and cold enough to make her flinch. "Is that why you really wanted to meet me? To see if I knew anything about what's going to happen?" "No," she said quickly. "I mean, I know you still have contacts in the industry. I just thought maybe you'd heard something." "Heard something?" I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "That Langston Mercer is buying Trident Core Systems? That the entire board is about to be replaced? That your fiancé is going to lose the company he thinks he owns?" The color left her face. She looked pale and shocked. What are you talking about?" she whispered. I stood up and fixed my blazer with a calm smile. "You should probably head back to the office, Barbara. Wouldn't want to be late for the board meeting. I hear it's going to be interesting." "Jennifer, wait," she called after me. "What do you know?" I turned back, giving her the sweetest smile I could manage. Just that karma, just like Larry, can be very persuasive when she wants something. The next hour passed in a blur. Final documents were signed. Scott confirmed that everything was ready. Langston Mercer's team was in position. Even the security team had been briefed. Everything was set. The moment I had worked so hard for was finally here. I stood in front of the mirror in my temporary office across the street from Trident Core Systems, taking one last look at myself. The plain black blazer I had worn earlier was gone. In its place was a beautifully tailored Chanel suit. My hair was styled neatly, and my makeup was perfect. I didn't just feel ready, I looked the part too. Today, I wasn't just another face in the crowd. I was about to walk in as the new CEO. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Larry. "Larry, why are Langston Mercer executives at our board meeting? What did you do?" I smiled at my reflection, thinking about all the times Larry had made me feel small. He had underestimated me, pushed me aside, and acted like I didn't matter. But those days were over. "Me. On my way. Wouldn't want to miss your big announcement," I replied with a smirk. 3 years had passed, but the Trident Core Systems boardroom looked exactly the same. The same polished mahogany table, the same leather chairs, and the same stunning view of the city from the floor-to-ceiling windows. But this time I was different. I wasn't walking in as Larry's wife. I wasn't the former chief strategy officer who had been pushed out. I was walking in as the new owner. As I stepped into the room, the noise died instantly. Everyone turned to look at me. Larry stood at the head of the table, his face tight with confusion and growing anger. Barbara was beside him, nervously twisting her big engagement ring. The rest of the board, handpicked by Larry, shifted in their chairs, clearly unsure of what was happening. "Jennifer," Larry said coldly, "this is a closed board meeting. You're not allowed to be here." "Actually," I said calmly, placing my briefcase on the table, "I'm exactly where I belong." I nodded toward Scott, who stood up from his seat with the Langston Mercer executives. "Ladies and gentlemen," Scott said, handing folders to everyone at the table, "as of 10 o'clock this morning, Langston Mercer has officially acquired Trident Core Systems. All legal documents have been filed. The transfer of ownership is complete." Larry grabbed one of the folders, his hands shaking as he flipped through the pages. "This can't be real. The board would need to approve something like this." Scott didn't flinch. "Not in this case. The board's approval wasn't required. Ownership rights allowed the sale to proceed through a leveraged buyout." The room was silent. Larry's face turned pale as the truth sank in. I stood tall, meeting every eye in the room. The woman they tried to silence, erase, and forget had just returned stronger than ever, and this time, I was in charge. I stepped in calmly, my voice steady. Langston Mercer gained control of Trident Core Systems by buying up shares over the last 19 months. All done legally, I promise you. Larry's face turned red. Strategic stock purchases? That's not possible. Those shares were protected, held in family trusts and hidden through holding companies. Yes, I nodded, they were. But once your creative accounting practices came to light, some of those trusts were forced to sell their shares. And guess who bought them? Langston Mercer. At very good prices, too. Barbara suddenly stood up, her voice shaky. "Larry, what is she talking about?" I looked at her, feeling a small wave of satisfaction. For years, she had stood by his side, pretending everything was perfect. Now the truth was cracking through. "He's been hiding things, Barbara," I said, looking directly at her. "Moving company money around to pay for personal things, lying about how much profit the company was making, all just to keep the stock price looking good. The kind of tricks that the SEC takes very seriously." "That's a lie," Larry shouted, slamming his hand on the table. His face was twisted with anger. "This is just another one of your games. You're trying to what?" I interrupted firmly. "To protect the company from being destroyed? To bring out the truth? To make sure justice is finally served?" "Yes, Larry. I'm doing all of that." Scott, standing quietly with the Langston Mercer team, cleared his throat. "If you'll all look at page 3 of the folders we handed out," he said, "you'll see the details of the new leadership plan. Miss Jennifer Syme will take over as CEO immediately." The boardroom exploded into noise. Some members spoke over each other. Larry was yelling about lawsuits. Barbara sat down, covering her face, softly crying. But I stood still at the end of the table, calm, strong, and in control. I had waited 3 years for this. "This is my company," Larry finally shouted above the noise. "You can't just walk in here and take everything." I looked him straight in the eyes and spoke quietly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. "It's not your company anymore, Larry. You lost at the moment you thought the rules didn't apply to you. When you decided loyalty didn't matter. When you treated people like they could be thrown away." I turned to the rest of the board. "Those of you who were not part of Larry's actions are welcome to stay, pending a full review. But anyone who helped cover up the lies? Please clean out your desks by the end of today. Security will be watching." Larry stepped toward me, his face full of rage. "You planned this? You've been planning this the whole time. You're vindictive." Just then, 3 security guards appeared at the door. I didn't flinch. I simply smiled and said, "No, Larry. I'm prepared." I didn't need to signal the guards. Everything had been planned ahead of time. One of the security officers stepped forward and said firmly, "Mr. Justin, please come with us. We'll help you pack up your office." Larry was still shouting, throwing around threats and accusations, but the guards stayed calm as they led him away. I watched him go without saying a word. Then I saw Barbara walking toward me. Her face was a mess, mascara running, tears in her eyes. She no longer looked like the confident woman she always pretended to be. "Did you know?" I asked quietly. About the fraud? The hidden accounts? She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't want to know, she whispered. It was easier to believe him. To think that I was the problem. That maybe I deserved everything that happened. I looked at her closely. This was the same woman I had once trusted more than anyone, besides Larry. She had been my closest friend. You know what's funny? I said, my voice calm. If either of you had just been honest, if you'd admitted the affair, ended things respectfully, none of this would have happened. What do you mean? She asked, confused. I would have been hurt, of course. Angry, yes. But I would have signed the divorce papers, kept my shares, and moved on with my life. But instead, you both chose lies and betrayal. And now, this is the result of those choices. The next few hours passed in a blur. Security escorted Larry and several board members out of the building. The HR team started processing their termination papers. Meanwhile, the Langston Mercer audit team began reviewing the company's records. They moved fast, checking documents, reviewing emails, and gathering evidence. By late afternoon, I finally had a quiet moment in what was now my office, Larry's former corner office, with its amazing view of the city skyline. Barbara had left earlier. Her dream of becoming Mrs. Justin and a powerful company director had ended in a single morning. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Larry. Larry, this isn't over. You won't get away with this. I smiled, thinking about the SEC investigation that would be announced the next day. Every piece of evidence was ready, his fraud, the fake numbers, the illegal transfers. All of it. Me. It is over, Larry. The only question is if you'll face the truth like a man, or make it even worse for yourself. Just then, Scott walked in holding a bottle of champagne. Congratulations, CEO Sim. Phase 1 is complete. I took the glass he offered and watched the bubbles rise. How's the first look at the accounts going? I asked. He gave a small grin. Honestly, about as bad as we expected. I nodded, sipping the drink. Good. That means we're right on track. As we expected, Scott said, looking over the initial reports. Larry has been messing with the company's finances for years. The SEC is going to have a lot to work with. He glanced at me and added, but the good news is, the actual business is still strong. The products are good, the staff is talented. Once we clean things up and put proper rules in place, try and core systems, well, or whatever new name you choose, can be better than ever. I walked over to the large window, staring out at the city below. So many lights, so many lives moving forward. You know what's strange? I said quietly. I didn't do any of this just for revenge. Not really. I did it because the company deserves better. The people who work here, they deserve better than what Larry turned it into. Scott nodded. Speaking of the team, he said while checking his phone, the email just went out to all staff about the new ownership. Your inbox is probably filling up already. I smiled and walked over to my desk. It was sleek and modern. Nothing like Larry's huge, flashy mahogany desk that had screamed for attention. I opened my laptop, and just as Scott said, hundreds of emails were already coming in. Many were from people I had worked with before. One message stood out. It was from Elizabeth, my former assistant, the one Larry fired right after he pushed me out of the company. Subject: Welcome back. Welcome back, boss. The real Trident Core Systems has missed you. I felt a rush of emotion reading that. Elizabeth had always been loyal, and it meant the world to know that people still believed in me. Later that evening, as I was walking to my car in the parking garage, I noticed someone waiting by it. It was Barbara. Her makeup had been redone, but her eyes were still puffy and red from crying. They've arrested him, she said, not wasting a second. The SEC came to his house about an hour ago. They took him away. I nodded calmly. I know. There was too much evidence. Once it was all shown to them properly, they couldn't ignore it. She looked at me, her face tight with emotion. Did you ever love him? I mean, really love him? I paused for a moment, thinking about it. I loved who I thought he was, I said softly. Just like I loved who I thought you were. That's the thing about betrayal, I continued. It doesn't just break relationships. It breaks the memories of what those relationships used to mean. She wiped away another tear. I'm so sorry, Jennifer. For everything. I know you are, I said, unlocking my car door. But being sorry doesn't fix what's broken. It just means you see the damage now. She looked down. Then what matters? What matters, I said, getting into the car, is what we learn from it and who we become because of it. I looked at Barbara, really looked at her. For the first time, I didn't just see the friend who betrayed me or the woman who had taken my husband. I saw a person, a woman who had made some very bad choices and was finally starting to understand what those choices had cost her. I've learned something, I said softly. Real strength doesn't come from getting revenge. It comes from choosing to rebuild, from taking what's broken and turning it into something stronger. I looked her in the eye. That's what I'm going to do with this company. And that's what you'll need to do with your life now. She didn't say anything. She just nodded slowly, eyes full of regret. Later that night, as I drove home, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. My phone buzzed again. It was another message from Larry's lawyer this time. Message: we can make a deal. Just ask the SEC to step back. Let's talk. I didn't even read it twice. I deleted the message and tossed my phone onto the seat beside me. Some people never learn. But that was no longer my problem. I had a company to lead, a future to build, employees who were counting on me. I wasn't looking back anymore. The next morning, I walked into the building that had once been the center of so much pain. But today, it felt different. Soon, Trident Core Systems would have a new name, Phoenix Industries. A name that stood for rising again, for second chances, for strength after being burned. The security guard at the front desk smiled and nodded as I walked in. In the elevator, employees greeted me with friendly faces and warm words. Their eyes no longer looked afraid or uncertain. They looked hopeful. When I reached my new office, Elizabeth was already there. She was holding a cup of coffee in one hand and a stack of reports in the other. Ready to change the world, boss? She asked with a big smile. I laughed softly and took the coffee. Let's do it. I sat down at my desk. It was sleek, simple, and full of possibility. I turned to look out the window. The same city where I had once lost everything now looked brand new, full of opportunity, full of hope. We're going to build something amazing, I said. Something we can all be proud of. And deep in my heart, I knew that this wasn't just about business. It was about healing, about rising stronger, and about finally becoming the woman I was always meant to be.